Before we are born, we are predestined with purpose. We begin our journey to reach our destiny through the birthing chambers. Our struggle begins, our first trial of life, the fight to reach the shining inkling of light. It is life. The face of it, whether it be the handling of stern nurses who prepares us to meet the softness of our mother, who looks upon us with love and affection. But then we grow and learn. We learn what reality truly is, and that thing, that force, that keeps us from walking on the right path to destiny. And soon we forget. We forget our purpose. You're too stupid to go to school. Dr. Earle Williams is a Christian clinical psychologist, assistant professor at South University, forensic evaluator, author, and speaker. His story is a roadmap of one's journey of being told he was mentally retarded. He was too stupid to finish high school, and he should quit and get a job.
So growing up, that's what we called him. We called him Chip. It was only, I think in the 80s when he told me, well, my name's Earle. He was quiet, and I don't think that he was shy. I think he was just more introverted. And so I recognized that in him because that's like a reflection. I used to spend a lot of time at the library. So we used to talk all the time from the time we were young. Talk about the world. We didn't talk about our feelings a lot, but we just talked about the world and things that were going on around us. And what I always admired about Chip was he was non-judgmental.
It started with an epiphany, a spiritual experience that would become the next phase of Earle Williams' life. This phase would be so different that it caused him to drop everything that he was doing and follow the guide that was pulling at the strings of his heart. This unforeseen step went on to change the lives of many people.
I was 21 years old. I had just gotten out of the Air Force after serving a 4-year tour of duty. And I went in the Air Force prior to the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was going on very strongly when I got out, So I got out of the Air Force, I returned home to Boston, and I was going to school. I had decided that I wanted to be an astronaut, and so I was going to Wentworth Institute where I was studying aeronautical and space engineering. At the time of my final exams, around November of that year, my mother died. My mother was killed by a white male hit-and-run driver. I know because she had called her job and told the person at her job that, and told the person at her job that she was just going to go home and lay down. So obviously she wasn't hit full force, but maybe brushed. But my mother was rather delicate. She was petite. She was very small. She was a Navajo. And she died. Now, my mother, when I was a child, used to tell me stories about how she was raised by black people and how they had in Alabama, after her parents died in Texas, I believe, and how they used to put furniture against the door to keep out the Ku Klux Klan. So in my mind, when I went back to my mother's apartment and found that she had been killed and died, and they took her body and brought it to the morgue, and then told me to go down to the morgue and identify her body, which I did. And because she had been dead for about a week, she had begun to decompose. And so I became very angry, and I wanted revenge against white people.
The experience of death takes Earle Williams on a journey that pushes him to take on an out-of-character personality. He begins a life of crime that included breaking and entering of stores and warehouses. He did not possess a criminal mentality, but the pain he suffered from the loss of his mother caused him to end up in the Walpole Maximum Prison.
I got hooked up with a group of guys that would go to the suburbs, the white suburbs, and rob warehouses. And that's what we did. And so that's why I got into my criminal activity. It was an act of revenge, and it was purposeful. You know, I assume full responsibility for my behavior. I didn't do it because of anything else except the fact that I wanted to do it at that moment in time. About 63, 64, and during that time there was a lot of civil unrest. You know, there was a lot of tension, there was a lot of racism in Boston, as well as all over the country, because that was a time, you know, Martin Luther King Jr. and riots and things of that nature. It was kind of rough back then. You know, I mean, you know, there were certain neighborhoods you couldn't go into, without, arming yourself. Yes, it was. I mean, the thing is that it never occurred to me to be a player. And by player, I mean, be like a pimp, because I was really a thief, and I was okay with being a thief, but a woman approached me in the Rainbow nightclub in Roxbury, and her name was Hazel, and she needed a place to stay. She had her bags with her, and I said, well, she asked me if she could stay with me. I said, okay, that's fine. I have my own apartment, in the Eggleston Square area of Roxbury. And she was a prostitute, and she wanted to work, Now, for me, I didn't care if she worked or not, because, my attitude was, I don't need your money, I get my own money. And besides, a Mac back in the day, the not necessarily the players, but the Macs, the thieves, we kind of looked down on pimps, because a pimp is dependent on a woman for his money. So I didn't really hold the idea of that kind of behavior in very high esteem, but that's what she wanted to do. I didn't care if she went to work or not, but she always went to work, and I set her up, in Providence, Rhode Island, and that's what she did. We would take trips to New York, and she would recruit other women to work for me, and that's what she wanted to do, so I just sort of went along with the program. He laughed when he saw me coming in prison.
I was happy to see him.
He laughed.
Because we was in a holding place called Charles Street Jail, I had a case, in his case, and I would see Earle, he was going back and forth to court. So I had thought he had beat his case. I thought because I was in Walpole during my
Before
time.
me.
Yeah, I was in Walpole. And so when I look up one day and the new man's coming in there, and
I'm walking down the hall, he busts out laughing.
I said, you're here.
Like homecoming,
I said, I'm all right now. It's gonna be all right now. Now
I wasn't feeling all right.
now,
It
it was that brotherly love we had for each other.
Yeah, it was, But
It is in the lowest and sometimes darkest places of your life when you start to see the light. It gives you hope to come out of where you are. But Earle's struggle to overcome barriers continues to bind him to darkness.
The second to last time I was in court, I was wearing a suit, which is something I very seldom did. And so I was thinking that I would really like to be rich. I'd like to be rich, And so my thought was, who's got the money? Does the money in America go from the East Coast to the West Coast, or from the West Coast to the East Coast? So I was thinking that it goes from the East Coast to the West Coast, with the stock market. So I went downtown and to apply for a job as a stockbroker. And the first place, they asked me if I had a college degree, and I said no. I said, well, no, we can't use you. I said, okay, all right. So I went to the second place, same thing. Then I went to the third place, and I said, I'd like to speak to the president. And he said, what is it about? I said, it's about a position. They said, okay, would you like an application? I said, no, I don't want an application. See, by now I didn't even want an application. You couldn't even give me an application, So I said, well, so she goes in the back, she comes back, she says, the president's tied up. Will an executive vice president do? So I look at my watch. I said, well, how long is it going to be tied up? You know, she said, another couple of hours. I said, well, I don't really have that much time. So yes, executive vice president will do. So I talked to the executive vice president, and he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to sell. I said, you know what? I can sell anything to anybody, anywhere, for any amount of money. I'm good. I got skills. And I told him, I had about a 15-minute spiel. I told him that. And when I got through, he said, okay, I have some classes starting up, you know, for mutual funds. You know, you can start with mutual funds. I said, okay. And it's out in some town, some suburban town. I said, well, I don't have a car. He said, you come down here at 5 o'clock, and my wife and I will take you there. So I came back downtown at 5 o'clock. Him and his wife took me to classes. And he was talking about opening up an office for me in Roxbury, you know, and I thought that was very nice, you know. And then the following week, I had to go back to court, and I got sent to prison.
Earle never got a chance to take that job. The past didn't want to let him go. In returning to court for robbing the jewelry store, Earle was slapped in the face with 2.5 to 3 years in maximum security prison of Walpole, instead of a slap on the wrist.
But then it occurred to me that what I had done to get into prison would not have made my mother proud, you know. So then I felt ashamed, you know, which is something I hadn't felt, because although the thing I had been feeling before that was anger and rage, you know, but now I felt shame, you know, and so I had to figure out a way to forgive this man so that I could move forward. I was just sort of floundering, you know. I really didn't know which way was up. I didn't know where I was going. I had no idea where I was headed. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I had no plan. I had no plan. I had no direction. And it was during a time of affirmative action, you know, and I had heard about this school that Minister Don was heading up, you know, called the Roxbury Medical Technical Institute, and that's a prep school, you know, for people that want to go to college. And so I signed up, and it didn't cost anything, you know. It didn't. The thing is that it was a friend of mine and myself signed up for it, you know, a woman named Dania and myself signed up for it. She went on to become a dental hygienist, you know. And so we were taking the classes, you know, preparing us for college. And that's how it all started.
I was director of the ambulatory care unit of a place called Dorchester Mental Health Center. And Earle walked in one day. I can't remember whether he walked in without an appointment and asked to see me, because that was just the type person he was. He just like, whenever he wants something, he just goes for it. So I can't remember whether he made an appointment or whether he walked in, but I remember very clearly that we had this meeting, and he said, "I'm Earle Williams." And I said, "Nice to meet you." And we started just chatting, and I said, "So how can I help you today?" He says, "Well, I'd like to be a psychologist." And I said, "Okay. Well, what are you doing now? What's your professional career? Are you in school someplace? Are you seeking an internship? Just what are you doing?" He said, "No, I'm a plumber." And he was unbelievable. He was like better than some of the professionals we had. He had a knack of just attracting people that were, quote, hard to reach. He was able to just say, "Sit down and let's have a conversation. What's life been like for you? How can we help you?" And people would just pour out their hearts to him. And he was able to form relationships that lasted. People would be coming back, even on days that they didn't have appointments, looking for Earle Williams. The rest is history. He enrolled in, I told him, I said, "You really do need to get a professional degree if you really want to be a psychologist." And he went to I think it was the School of Professional Psychologists. It was one of the first schools of, He was in the first or second class of this particular school. It was a new psychology school. And he flourished, and he became just one of the best psychologists we had on the ward. He worked both inpatient and outpatient. He did a lot of community work. He would actually go out into the community and meet people on the street and somehow they would end up in his room doing therapy. He was just phenomenal.
But I worked at the University of Massachusetts in the admissions office, and one day in walks Earle. And I'm like, Earle, what are you doing here? He said, oh, I'm going to go to school here. So that was the beginning of our close relationship because we were both students at UMass. Well, Earle was always unique. His family raised him in the tradition of Booker T. Washington and the Tuskegee school of thought, which said that you not only had to use your brain smarts, but you also had to use your hands. So Earle would plumb to pay his tuition. He wasn't one for financial aid. He just worked all summer or whatever and paid his tuition in cash and just kept it rolling. I never saw Earle, I never saw him doubt himself. He left UMass and went to a school in Newton. I don't remember the name of it. And the school wasn't accredited. And most people, after all the hard work he did to get the associate's degree and the bachelor's degree, most people wouldn't take a chance on going to a graduate program that wasn't accredited. But from the minute Earle got to that school, everything he did was towards getting that school accredited. And of course, by the time he left there and graduated, it was accredited.
I am of the belief that things that happen to us in our lives are to some extent preordained. And it is with our free will that we get to react to them any way we choose. I don't think that it was a mistake or a coincidence that I met you. I am just glad that I took full advantage of all the love, inspiration, and kindness that you had, that you gave me. I think I may have mentioned it before. I sometimes when pictorially, I think of you as someone that has been given dominion over a beach, and I'm just one pebble in that beach of people that you have probably helped. I want to be like that one leper of the 10 that Jesus cured, that came back to say thank you, because I am very well aware that I would not be where I am today if it were not for your coaching, your teaching, and your inspiration and your motivation. You had told me, you said, Earle, if you were white, they'd consider you a genius. That's what you told me. Now, this is after a whole lifetime of people. They had told my mother I was mentally retarded when I was in kindergarten. I started high school when I was 12 years old. I was the only black at Cathedral High School. My father told me I was too stupid to finish high school. I should drop out and get a job. And you were the only person, the only man that told me that I'm intelligent, that told me that yes, I have something to contribute, that yes, I am a worthwhile human being, yes, that God got a plan for my life, yes, I can accomplish something. You did that for me. No one else. And when it comes to that, I love my father, and my father's a good man. But you motivated me and encouraged me in a way that my father couldn't or didn't. In that moment in time, you were my father, because I believed you. And I believe that you wouldn't have said that if you didn't mean it. And for that, I am indebted to you for the rest of my life. Any good that I do for other people as a clinical psychologist wouldn't have happened if you hadn't done that one good thing for me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Through many ups and downs, Earle married Maxine. She was truly the woman of his dreams. They had a daughter and named her Taria, and later added a son to their family.
Because of all of his siblings, he was his mother's heart. And so I think that finally struck a chord for him. That he could do more, that he could be more, and he had a responsibility to himself and to his mother to do that. And of course, eventually he met Maxine. And she really was a grounding force for him.
I noticed that he had a serious gift about him because things that he would say were just so amazing. Things that you wouldn't know how to explain. But he just blurted it out and you could understand it so well that things that you wanted to explain but you really couldn't, and he just seemed to have that gift about him. Trying to decide where to move, I had a dream, and I dreamt this house in my dream. I dreamt about the trees on the side of this house, and I dreamt looking in the house. Virginia would be the place that we needed to move. And so we looked on the map and we saw Virginia Beach. And so what I did was I came down here on the train, went to Virginia Beach, checked it out. Earle gave me blank checks, and I got an apartment. We went back up. I went back up to Boston. A week later, we moved down in September, just before our daughter Taria started school. And we've been here ever since. A year after we got here, our son was born, Earle H. William III. And as soon as he got here, he got a job working at Eastern State Hospital. Working at Eastern State Hospital for 3 years. After 3 years, then he opened up his private practice.
Earle has created a unique tool for ex-felons to stay out of prison. It is the purpose that was divinely handed to him. He asked ex-felons several questions. What was your first crime? What is the nature of your spiritual development? And how is your social network? He also offers the technique called act as if.
Or things like my father told me when I was a child, son, if what you're doing isn't working, you do something else, because only a fool keeps making the same mistakes over and over again. Son, you go out there and find you a new mistake. Of course, I didn't get it until I was about 30, because most of the things you'll ever learn in life, you will learn from mistakes, And it's okay to make mistakes, it's just not okay to make the same mistake over and over again. So if you're not making the same mistake over and over again, that means you've learned something. I wrote about my life, how they told my mother when I was in kindergarten that I was mentally retarded. And I just want you to know I'm not. In case anyone's wondering, well, he could still be. No. Well, I don't know. I mean, jury's still out on that. Anyone doing on that Q-test? No. So anyway, I had to deal with that, and then in high school in Boston, I was the only black in this Catholic high school that I went to, and I was 12 years old when I started high school. 9th grade, 12 years old. Obviously, I was the only black and the youngest person there. And high school homeroom teacher said any college that accepts you is hard up. My father told me I was too stupid to finish high school. I should drop out and get a job. So I didn't get a lot of encouragement along the way, if you kind of get my drift here, So I came through some of that kind of stuff. And I wrote about that in my book, And the second half of my book is filled with techniques that I use to stay out of prison. One of the things that I've learned is that God has a plan for your life, and prison is not it. Nobody was born to be in prison. Another thing that I've learned is that there's very little failure in life. The things that you try to do that don't work out are probably God's way of saying, try again. Because in a lot of ways, life is a maze. And so we have to learn how to go through this maze and how to accept rejection for something that we wanted to do and not get bitter about it and try something else. We talk a lot about the things that I have done correctly. We talk a lot about the things that I have done successfully. We haven't talked about the things I failed at. I failed at a lot of things.
And I still today, when people make mistakes, and I've done a lot of work with ex-offenders, and I think that ex-offenders just don't get a fair shake. I think that everybody deserves a fair shake. Everybody, no matter what. And that's what that was the premise I've always lived by in my professional career. We had lots of ex-offenders who've made mistakes, and of course some return to that behavior. But given opportunities and given support services, I believe that, and a lot of people tell me often, Shirley, you believe everybody can't change the way you think they can, but I absolutely believe in giving people a chance. And that's what we did with Earle. And it's just amazing how his life the directions it's gone into. He got his degree, he has written several books, Roxbury Redemption, and several others. And he's just continued to grow. And now down in Virginia, he's doing all kinds of things in prisons with people who, and writing career reports on people who have been adjudicated, not delinquent, but who's had some problems with the law. He goes in and writes those reports, evaluates people, determines whether they're eligible to stand trial or whatever it is that he needs to do. But he's just had a fantastic career, and I feel so great to have been a part of that life. I just, when I look at him, I'm like, wow, he really did a fantastic job with his life.
Dr. Earle Williams is a gift that the world needs. We are all aware that our world is building more prisons, and the majority of them are housing most of our African American males, the black male. Dr. Earle is spreading hope and love for those who have found themselves in the darkest and loneliest moments of their life. He encourages them to look for that light and don't take your focus off of it. It is the light that will pull you out of your dark place. It will be your redemption.